Welcome and happy holidays. In today's video, I'm going to share 6 carnivore holiday recipes with you, including spatchcock turkey, carnivore mac and cheese, along with 2 other sides and 3 desserts, including a delicious pumpkin spice cheesecake. If I used a recipe, I will link it in the description, along with all of the kitchen tools and special ingredients we're using. And of course, if you're doing keto or low carb, you can add some vegetables to some of these dishes. In the case of artificial sweeteners, just use the one that you prefer. Let's start with the main course, turkey. First off, we have 2 turkeys, a 12-pounder and a 13-pounder. We're going to spatchcock them and season each a bit differently. I'll link the video in the description that we watched to learn how to spatchcock, but it's really simple. Just take some sharp kitchen scissors and cut the spine out of the turkey, and then lay the turkey flat on a baking sheet with a wire rack, and then you tuck in the wings. For the first turkey, we used some basic spices and seasonings along with bacon grease. For the second turkey, we made a garlic herb butter with 2 sticks of butter, fresh sage, rosemary, and thyme, and a ton of garlic cloves. If you aren't doing herbs at all on carnivore, just skip these and only use the butter. We put a cup of dry vermouth and a cup of chicken broth in the baking sheet, and we used our meat thermometers set to 160 degrees Fahrenheit or 71 degrees Celsius. We set the oven to 420 degrees Fahrenheit or 215 degrees Celsius. We pulled the turkeys out and basted them twice. Be sure to pay attention to the liquid level in the bottom of the baking sheet. You may need to add more broth to keep it from drying out. After about an hour, we finished the birds on the quick bake setting. It's kind of like an air fry / light broil setting that we have on our oven. It gives a nice browning to the skin. Spatchcocking a turkey cuts the cooking time in at least half, and we've been doing this for the past 3 years. As far as how long it takes, we go by the meat thermometer. It's the most precise way. And of course, you don't need these fancy thermometers. You can just use a basic one, but these are super accurate, and we are happy that we invested in 2 of them. Look at these turkeys. They both turned out perfectly. We highly recommend spatchcocking. In this video, I will be using my set of Caraway cookware in navy blue. These are non-stick, non-toxic, ceramic-coated pans that are functional as well as beautiful. Caraway is having their biggest sale of the year right now until November 28th, 2023. So if you want these pans for a steal, head over to the link in the description to get up to 20% off your order. Again, this deal is red hot and ending soon, so use the link in the description to take advantage of it today. Our next recipe is a carnivore gravy. I got this recipe from asheats.com and I followed it to a T. It really turned out great. I'm pretty impressed with it. The recipe is linked in the description. Here are the ingredients. I've linked the beef gelatin in the description as well. We had about 2.5 cups of turkey drippings, so we used them all. I fried up the giblets first. Now, this step isn't necessary if you have this much turkey drippings, but I did it for fun. I added the butter and then I removed the giblets and added 2 cups of chicken bone broth and 2.5 cups of drippings and then stirred. Now, while I was doing all of that, I bloomed 3 tablespoons of beef gelatin in 1 cup of cold water, and within a couple of minutes, it was good to go. Now, after I let everything simmer for about 20 minutes, it had reduced by half, and then I turned off the stove and I added in the gelatin and stirred, and then I let that cool for a while. We didn't need to add any spices or salt. The drippings were flavor enough. Here is what the gravy looks like once it was in the fridge overnight. All you have to do is reheat it to get the consistency back. It is a little bit thin. If you wanted to thicken it up, you could use some guar gum or xanthan gum, but we liked it just the way that it turned out. Now, let's move on to the carnivore mac and cheese. I also got this recipe from Ash Eats, but I made a few modifications, mostly just adding stuff in. Here are the ingredients. First, we took a bag of pork rinds and ground them up with some Parmesan, and then I set that aside in a bowl. Next, we made the mac, which is just ground chicken mixed with egg. And at first, I started by piping it out of a bag and cutting it with scissors to make these little nuggets, and that worked, but it took a long time. So in the end, I would just squeeze out a big swirl or squiggle of the chicken paste and then cut it into nuggets as it cooked. And that went a lot faster. We ended up using 2 pounds of ground chicken to fill a small casserole dish. Next came the cheese sauce. Now in this recipe, it calls for raw cheese, which I had never heard of in my life. I'm assuming it's like raw milk. I could probably get it at a local grass-fed farm, but I did not have time for that. So I used cotija instead. I did half whole milk, half heavy cream, 2 teaspoons of yellow mustard, a tablespoon of fresh lemon juice, and then I salted to taste. And I poured this over the mac, and then I covered everything with some freshly grated mozzarella and some sharp white and sharp regular cheddar. And then I added a healthy sprinkling of the pork rind mixture. Now we baked this at 400 degrees Fahrenheit or 204 degrees Celsius for 10 to 20 minutes, just until the cheese is all melty. This makes about 6 to 8 servings, and it's an excellent, fully carnivore side dish that everyone will enjoy. It goes fast, and it's best when it's fresh and hot. It will store in the fridge for a couple of days, but after that, the pork rinds get a bit stale, so I recommend eating this dish quickly. Our next 2 side dishes are super easy, and there's only 1 ingredient each. First is the oven-baked cheese from Gardeners, Wisconsin. We love these 4 flavors: bacon, chipotle, original, and 5-year cheddar. And they really couldn't be easier to cook. We use the air fryer typically. About 10 minutes is all you need. But if you're doing a bunch of these for a big group, you can use the oven. I bet you could fit 6 to 8 of these on a regular baking sheet. I flip it once while cooking, and then I cut it and eat it while it's still melty and hot. Next, we take a bag of the squeaky cheese curds from Gardeners, Wisconsin, and I pan fry them for about a minute on each side, and they turn out all crunchy and delicious. Fully carnivore, no breading needed at all. I've put a link to Gardeners, Wisconsin in the description. They always have great deals, and you get free products depending on how much you order. Now, let's move on to the desserts. The first is 2 different flavors of egg pudding. First, let's make the pumpkin spice and then the vanilla. I originally learned how to make egg pudding from the channel 5 Minute Body, but I've also linked a video to a pumpkin spice version of it from Carnivore Doctor. She has a ton of great recipe videos on her channel. Egg pudding is super simple. 2 eggs to a half cup of heavy cream. I've heard water or broth can be used as well, but I love using heavy cream. Then add a tablespoon of melted ghee or butter, a 1/4 of a teaspoon of pumpkin spice, and an 1/8 of a teaspoon of vanilla extract. Mix everything together and then put it into a small dish. Now let's mix up the vanilla pudding. Same thing with 2 eggs, half a cup of heavy cream, do the tablespoon of ghee, vanilla extract, and then for this one, I added 4 to 6 drops of liquid stevia. Now we're going to put this into a pot with a little wire rack and some boiling water so that we can steam the egg pudding. After about 10 minutes, I checked it with the back of a spoon and it looked like it needed a little bit more time. So we did another 2 minutes and now it's ready. Now we can cook the vanilla pudding. Same process, about 12 minutes. And here's the finished product. I love egg puddings. They're very high fat and they taste great even without any artificial sweeteners. Now I've topped it with another dessert, which is a mascarpone whipped cream. Let's make this next. Here's the ingredients. It's a super simple recipe. We're mixing 8 ounces of mascarpone with 1 cup of heavy cream. We're going to add a few drops of stevia if you want to. And that's it. If you're doing keto, you could have this with some berries. That would be really tasty. But if you're staying carnivore, you can eat this on its own for a sweet treat, or you can use it as a topping for your egg pudding, or for our final dessert, which is a pumpkin spice cheesecake. I found the recipe for this 5-ingredient cheesecake from Carnivorous Chef. I've linked the video in the description. Here are the ingredients. First, we are going to soften 2 pounds of cream cheese and then add in 1.5 cups of stevia or whatever artificial sweetener you want to use. Whip that all together for a few minutes and then add a teaspoon of vanilla extract and 1.5 teaspoons of pumpkin spice and then mix it really well. Finally, you're going to mix in 3 eggs, 1 at a time, and then we're going to pour the finished mix into a buttered pie pan like I'm doing here, or you could use a 9-inch springform pan. Then you're going to put it into a deep baking dish and add hot water until it's a third of the way up the pie pan. I used my turkey baking dish for this and it worked great. Put this into the oven at 350 degrees Fahrenheit or 177 degrees Celsius for 50 to 60 minutes, or until it only slightly jiggles when you shake it. Then turn off the oven and let it vent out for about 30 minutes. Just, crack it open a little bit. And then after that, pull the cheesecake out of the oven and set it on the stove to cool for another 30 minutes. Then you're going to put it into a refrigerator and let it cool for at least 3 hours. You're going to cut this pumpkin spice cheesecake with a hot knife. I like to just run it under hot water for a minute and then serve it with a dollop of the whipped mascarpone topping, and voila! Another delicious carnivore-ish dessert. As you can see, it's totally possible to stay carnivore over the holidays and still enjoy some of your favorite holiday staples. Let me know in the comments what your favorite carnivore holiday recipe is. I love learning new recipes and trying things out, so that would be great. And thank you so much for watching. Happy holidays!